Hey Edson, it's Mayor Kevin Zahara with an update today about a very important topic, and that is homelessness in our community. Over the last number of years, we've been dealing with this issue. Last year, the Homelessness, Addictions, and Mental Health Task Force was created in our community, bringing over 30 organizations together to talk about this issue. Of course, we have a number of nonprofits and different agencies that are touching on this population and trying to help support them. One of the biggest issues, of course, is housing and people living on the streets, especially in the cold winter temperatures that we experience here in Edson. Last year, we started the Out of the Cold initiative, which was basically a trailer where when temperatures were really, really cold, the homeless population can go to find a place to escape those cold temperatures. Now, in a COVID world, not the most ideal situation because physically distancing requirements can't be met. There's a number of other challenges that were brought forward with the Out of the Cold initiative that was started last year. So luckily, here in our community, we have a number of organizations that have been working together and kind of thinking outside of the box on how we can address the situation. And Edson is going to be home to ShelterPod, and we'll get some details on that here in just a few moments. But first, I want to bring in Erica Snook-Pennings, who works for the Friendship Centre, deals with the homeless population, to talk about what she deals with on a day-to-day basis. First of all, Erica, how many homeless do we have here in the Edson community? And really, what are the services that they're looking for?
So right now, I am providing services to approximately 60 to 70 individuals. Some of those people access services multiple times a week, sometimes maybe once a week, a couple of times a month. In general, services that I'm providing to people are, we always have food here, toiletries, we help people get ID. I then will store that ID because if you have nowhere to stay regularly, those items often get lost and they're costly to replace. I also help people make medical appointments and connect to other services that are in the community that are currently not seeing people in person, like Alberta Works, AISH. I also help people track their medications, help them get the medications from the pharmacy, those sorts of things that are happening on an ongoing basis and have been actually for the last several years. Most recently during COVID, I've seen an increase in need for services as there's a lot of offices that are closed. So that's been certainly a difficult piece for a lot of individuals who are experiencing homelessness.
Now, when we talk about this issue, Erica, one of the key things is that we have a lot of homeless that actually are couch surfing. They might be living in vehicles or finding other solutions. There's only a small segment of the population that may be ending up on the streets when it's really, really cold outside or may need a place to stay. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, I mean, in general, this community of individuals are very good at supporting each other, but often we have people who literally have nowhere to stay. So this is sort of where the idea about ShelterPod came from. And I have to be honest, it really wasn't my idea. It was Auriat's idea who approached me with it. And I thought it was just brilliant and that it would be an excellent idea in terms of addressing emergency shelter in rural areas.
One of the topics often talked about here in Edson is the old Edson Hospital as a place where maybe we should be setting up a place for this population to stay. I guess one of the challenges that we have is in a building such as the old Edson Hospital. I know that's been a topic around town. The cost of actually operating that facility, the utilities is approximately $10,000 a month. Then you're talking about staffing and other operational costs, and really, once you start talking about those things, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in operating costs. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of grant support for rural Alberta when it comes to homelessness. So this initiative, ShelterPod, really addresses that issue as well, because this is a low-cost solution dealing with this specific issue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, historically, and I've looked around a lot, and we've gone to different communities, especially when the program started about 5.5 years ago, to see what kind of ideas were out there in terms of addressing emergency shelter for individuals in rural communities. Most communities have tried, and I think with the exception of probably Slave Lake, it's been MET programs that sort of operate for a short period of time and then don't tend to be successful because they rely on such a high volunteer base Because realistically, if you're going to have a 12-hour period where people need to volunteer, and then you need, for safety reasons, to have 2 individuals, and at least one of those individuals needs to have a skill set in order to address any concerns that arise during the evening. So, like, if we think about the Edson Food Bank, who I'm sure most people on Facebook see on a regular basis, that they're asking for volunteers for a 2-hour period, and there's always turnover there. So realistically, how do we begin to ask the community to support a program that you need 12 hours of volunteering on a regular basis, 7 days a week, not just the couple of days a week that like the food bank needs?
All right, so talking about ShelterPod, as you mentioned, the Edson District Recycling Society and Auriat came up with this brilliant idea. We have Anne here with us today to talk a little about ShelterPod and kind of how this idea came about and what is it going to look like at the Edson District Recycling Society. Anne, if you wouldn't mind explaining.
Sure, thanks very much. Number one, Recycling Society is a recycling society, so it deals with recycling and waste reduction. But when we started to see a number of homeless people needing places to stay and sleeping in odd places, and schools calling us that they're taking their sheds away for recycling because that became an issue with people sleeping in them, it became a safety issue. So that went into my realm of how do we help these people. And the other thing is I really don't want a staff member going out and finding someone frozen or in need of first aid in any of our buildings. So we came up with this idea, and just by out walking one day, I thought, well, we need something that is COVID proof, safety wise, it has to be secure, and it also has to maintain people's individual rights, and it also needs to be low on volunteer hours and time commitment and low operationally. So what we're going to do is convert part of our plastic recycling building into one half of it, or 1/4 of it, into 5 mini pods, which are 5 by 8 with individual doors, individual cameras monitoring who comes in or not, a safety lock system so that they will phone a volunteer and get a code for that door. So it encompasses all of those issues. It also diverts from people trying to sleep in our plastic shed and shredded bins, so that it adds a level of security for us.
All right, thank you very much, Anne. And this is what I think Council really likes about this initiative. It is a real collaborative effort with the Edson Friendship Centre, with the Edson District Recycling Society. I know there's been conversations with Reflections as well. Alberta Health Services is involved to ensure that all the codes are met. And Town Council recently granted $64,000 to this initiative as a part of a pilot project for the next 2 years. We also have the Edson RCMP that are involved, who has to often deal with this situation on a day-to-day basis. And right now we're joined by Sgt Christian Delisle of the Edson Detachment. From an RCMP perspective, why is this initiative so important?
Yes, good morning. Well, the RCMP is really happy to work in partnership with the other agencies on the ShelterPod program. In terms of a policing perspective, the ShelterPods are really in line with our strategy to make the community more safe for a few different aspects. The first one, it really helps the homeless population to have a place where they can have a safe place to have a good night of sleep, therefore not to have to worry about what could happen to them if they were outside. That would result in them having the possibility to be more receptive, to receive help, assistance, and work on some of the things that they would like to work on. And also, it also brings another factor that when we don't have to worry as much as we need to sometimes as a police service on calls for services, then it frees up some resources for other situations or police incidents in the community. So therefore, having the ShelterPods is kind of addressing like a vast majority of a clientele, from the homeless people to the population in the town of Edson, where some resources could be redistributed because we have less call for services. So that's basically why we're really happy to join our our efforts and our team to the people working on this project.
All right, thank you, Staff Sergeant Delisle. Just to wrap up here, while the council has approved $64,000 worth of grant funding, more support is needed, and there is a call out for donations. And maybe Erica can speak to how people can help out with the ShelterPod initiative and possibly donating in the future.
So the money for ShelterPod is going to be funneled, if that's the right word, through the Edson Friendship Centre. We are a charitable organization, so we can receive donations and then issue receipts, tax receipts in return. So, and then Anne will invoice us and we'll pay everything so that everything will be tracked through the Edson Friendship Centre. So yeah, for sure, we are looking for donations, and they can be directed to me specifically. I can take them, take your information, and ensure that a donation receipt gets given to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Erica, and hopefully we see the community come out and support the ShelterPod initiative. Once again, hats off going out to the Edson District Recycling Society, as well as the Edson Friendship Centre and all the other agencies working on this project.